Sound of wind passing through a hollow cathedral. A stopped clock reads 3:03. Pages of an old book turn slowly under the soft flicker of candlelight. Imagine the sound of your soul before you were born. Maybe it was silence, but not emptiness. Silence, full of memory. What if I told you three of the most enigmatic men in history, a scientist, an inventor, and a mystic, never met in person, and yet somehow whispered the same truth from different worlds? Albert Einstein questioned time itself, suggesting reality doesn't end when our senses fade. Nikola Tesla claimed to hear voices, to see formulas in the dark, to speak with unseen intelligence. Edgar Cayce, in trance, described past lives and invisible frequencies of the soul. They never sat in the same room, never shook hands, never exchanged words. Yet their thoughts circled the same impossible question. What if consciousness never dies? What if it never even begins? This isn't a video, it's a whisper across time, a calling for those who still remember, even if they don't know what they're remembering. Tonight you'll travel through forgotten spirals. You'll brush against memories that may not be yours, but still feel familiar. Because somewhere, in the space between Tesla's light, Cayce's dreams, and Einstein's equations, consciousness isn't something we possess, it's something that possesses us. Close your eyes for just a moment. Listen for what can't be spoken. Maybe you never forgot. Maybe you just stopped listening. Time begins now, or maybe it simply begins, remembering. There's a kind of silence that isn't the absence of sound, it's the absence of explanation. Einstein once wrote, "Is there really any separation between mind and matter? Or is it just our perception that divides what is truly one?" That question was never solved by equations. It remains, like a ghost in the wires, waiting to be heard. Elsewhere, in another chapter of time, Nikola Tesla tuned into realities with his body. He didn't read books. He felt fields. He said he received messages from the ether, saw blueprints in sleep, heard voices without mouths. They called him mad, but madness is often just clarity without translation. And then there was Cayce, the man who closed his eyes and awakened in other worlds. He described illnesses unseen by doctors, lives forgotten by memory, truths too subtle for microscopes. To him, the soul was made of sound, light, and frequency. Three men, three paths, one unspoken truth. They weren't trying to prove anything. They were trying to remember something they already knew before they had names for it. Tesla called it vibration. Einstein called it the field. Cayce called it the soul. Mainstream science, afraid of what it can't measure, tried to silence the whispers. But what's real always finds a way to return, between the lines of equations, beneath the stillness of thought. In the pauses between questions, Tesla believed the universe was vibration, not metaphor, structure. Einstein said the field was the only true reality, not just gravity, something deeper. Cayce said the soul continues, that the body is only a garment, that death is just a veil, a return. What happens when three voices from different worlds hum in the same frequency? You don't get sound, you get silence, but not silence as in ending, silence as in unveiling. Because in that space where mathematics, intuition, and trance meet, a strange thing appears. Consciousness isn't inside us. We are inside it. And here's the unsettling part. That field of awareness might have been you, before you were you, before the name, before time. What if the soul was made of light? Not the kind you see with your eyes, but the kind you feel when everything else goes dark. Nikola Tesla often said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. In trance, Edgar Cayce echoed that truth. Every being vibrates with a unique note. The soul is sound in living form. Two men, two languages, one invisible grammar. Today, science is catching up with what mystics have always known. The human heart emits a magnetic field far more coherent than the brain's. It sends signals. It receives them. It informs the body. and maybe the universe. Does the heart think, or better yet, does it feel thoughts the brain can't yet decode? Every thought is a wave, every feeling a broadcast. The field surrounding the human body isn't just physiological, it's symbolic. It's where memory lives, where intent is etched, where unseen decisions gather like morning fog. Maybe the soul is a light that thinks, not like a brain, but like a pattern. Light has always been more than metaphor. In sacred texts, it's the medium of origin. The Essenes saw it as the soul's language. Ancient Egypt weighed the soul by its alignment with inner light. We're not drawn to light because it illuminates. We're drawn to it because it recognizes us. And maybe, just maybe, we're not thinking within consciousness. We are the thought of consciousness, draped in skin, temporarily. What if death isn't the opposite of life, but the opposite of forgetting? Cayce often said the soul lives in layers, not as scattered pages, but as transparent overlays, all shaping the same face. The soul doesn't begin. It reveals itself in pieces, in cycles. To him, death wasn't the end. It was an interval, a silence between two notes, a moment of return where the soul recalibrates or remembers. Einstein, in his own quiet way, intuited the same. He saw time not as a line, but a curve, and every curve returns to itself. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion, he wrote. So maybe what we call an ending is just a return in disguise. Not the body ending, but the consciousness choosing another doorway. What scares us about death may not be death itself, but the disconnection, that unsettling thought that we'll forget who we are when the form dissolves. But what if it's the opposite? What if living is temporary amnesia, and dying is the moment we remember? Then immortality wouldn't be endless time. It would be presence without edges, an awareness that never stopped, just changed clothes. In this light, life becomes a sacred forgetfulness. We forget so we can choose. We forget so we can feel anew. We forget so we can remember with deeper truth. Pain, then, isn't punishment. It's memory surfacing, a whisper pulling you back toward what was never lost. And death? It doesn't end, it undresses. Nothing real can be threatened, Cayce reminded us. The ego can't grasp that, because the ego survives by holding on to identity, to control, to time. But the soul moves in spirals. It loops through experiences. It deepens through paradox. Consciousness doesn't vanish. It shifts tone. It lives, forgets, dies, and remembers. Not as repetition, but as sacred spiral. Each life a note, and all the lives a song. Final scene of the chapter. An ancient musical score turns into a spiral. The voices of a child and an elderly person overlap softly, whispering the same line. I remember. Soft voice. Maybe death isn't the end. Maybe it's the soul whispering. Now you may begin to remember. The soul doesn't walk a straight line. It spirals. Ancient traditions knew this. The Celts carved spirals into stone. The Egyptians hid them in temples. The Essenes saw them as the path light takes to return to the body. And now, science stumbles upon it again. DNA, the double helix, spiral code of life. Not just biological, but symbolic. It vibrates. It responds to intention. It holds memory. Not just genetic, but spiritual. Each cell remembers, even when your waking mind forgets. The spiral is not just a shape. It's a process. It's the motion consciousness makes when it's coming home. Recurring dreams, déjà vu, synchronicities, all may be the spiral speaking, the soul reorganizing, trying to communicate, not with words, but with patterns. Consciousness doesn't speak in sentences. It speaks in symbols, in rhythms, in archetypes. The same number repeating, a name you hear in different places, a stranger who feels familiar. All of it may be soul language, like a thread tugging gently, pulling you back toward essence. Tesla felt it. His obsession with 369 wasn't superstition, it was resonance. Cayce saw it in dreams, where symbols revealed what the waking world concealed. Even Einstein confessed. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. Maybe the spiral is that mystery, consciousness attempting to descend into form without losing the memory of its source. Final scene. A child draws a spiral in the sand. The wind erases it, but it keeps pulsing beneath the surface. Soft voice, reverent. The soul doesn't travel in lines, it folds, repeats, reveals, because the way back is never straight. It's circular, it's deep, it's yours. Every discovery comes with a cost, and the highest cost is the silence that follows. Cayce, after hundreds of soul readings, would often sit in stillness and say, "Nothing real can be threatened." But the ego doesn't understand that. It fears, because all it knows is temporary, and in the face of the soul's eternity, it begins to unravel. Albert Einstein lost a daughter, Liesel, under quiet and mysterious circumstances. Decades later, letters emerged, said to be his, where he wrote of love not as emotion but as force. Love is light, since it enlightens the one who gives and receives it. These words, born not from formulas but from mourning, are not explanations. They are confessions, fragments of a surrender only made when the intellect bows and the soul stands up. Tesla, alone in his final years, no longer chased invention. He sought communion. He spoke of conversations with intelligences beyond the veil, named birds who came to visit, heard the stars, not as madness, but as alignment with a frequency most have forgotten how to hear. Both men died surrounded by silence, but maybe that silence was their loudest answer. Because when science reaches its threshold and spirit no longer needs to prove itself, what remains is recognition and grief, not for death, but for the self we must let go, so that what is real can finally take its place. What if that's what your pain is? The grief of the ego, sensing its time is ending, not through violence, but through remembrance. True consciousness doesn't fight. It yields. It opens. Like Tesla, looking up and saying, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all previous centuries." Like Einstein admitting, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." Like Cayce, who would fall silent after a reading, as if returning from a place where time dissolves. The day they agreed may not be marked in any book, may not have happened here, but there is a field, a place with no space, a moment outside time, where every consciousness meets itself, where Einstein, Tesla, and Cayce are no longer names, but frequencies, and in that place, they all agree. Final scene. The lab fades to dark. The letter reappears, this time a single sentence visible. What is real remains. A soft light enters through the window. Outside, spirals form in the clouds. Whispered voice. Maybe the day they agreed was never on Earth, but in the field where all that is real remembers itself. What if what you call an ending is just the moment the veil tears, not with violence, but with memory? Time, this thread we cling to, may be just the costume consciousness wears to return slowly, so as not to scare the self. Einstein tried to explain it. Tesla tried to hear it. Cayce tried to dream it. But maybe the answer never lived in time, or in light, or in language. Maybe it's always been inside you, still, quiet, waiting for your return. You're not lost. You're remembering. In every recurring dream, in every chill without cause, in every synchronicity that makes no sense, but feels perfect. Those are echoes. the field calling you. The same field that aligned three souls who never met, but spoke the same. Because when the soul recognizes truth, it doesn't argue. It bows. Time curves, logic fades, the ego softens, and something inside you whispers, "I always knew." But there's always a choice. There always has been. You can stay asleep, or you can hear the quiet invitation that's been repeating since before you had a name. It doesn't speak in sound. It vibrates. It doesn't have a shape. It reveals. And if you made it this far, you weren't drawn here by chance. You were remembered. You were aligned. You were already agreeing, even if you didn't know with what. Final scene. The lake ripples. A single point of light rises in a spiral into the sky. Darkness returns. A single phrase hovers in the silence. Whispered voice, "If you could remember who you were before fear, what else would there be left to search for?" Something deep stirred in you. Leave a sign, a single dot, a silence, a forgotten word, so that others like you will know they're not alone.